Every few years, the US government declassifies previously top secret files to the public. One such file, from 2017, was that of Project StarGate, which had nothing to do with James Spader and everything to do with psychic soldiers fighting communism and looking into space.
So I take it that's what we're talking about.
Yeah, we're going to be talking about Project Stargate, not to be confused with the new Project Stargate that was announced by Donald Trump, which is AI slop and a waste of everyone's electricity and money. This is It Belongs in Museum, where we talk about things that are stranger in our reality than anything in fiction, including Stargate. And yeah, today's episode will be about that. So, Project Stargate began during the Cold War as a follow-up to MK Ultra, which had run from 1953 to 1973,
And that's kind of like an infamous, like, secret project. Like,
using LSD to
yeah,
try and.
I mean, it's what inspired Stranger Things.
Interesting. Never seen an episode.
Yeah, first season is charming.
During the Cold War, the CIA believed that the Russians were creating psychic soldiers to spy on them because they were catching real spies all the time. So, to protect America, the CIA decided that, well, they couldn't be the only superpower doing that. If the Soviets are doing it, then so will we. So they started their own psychic division of the CIA. To protect the Americans, they decided we needed our own psychic people. So the main focus was something called remote viewing, or the ability to see far away, behind closed doors, into the spirit realm, into the past, into the future, and even into space to contact alien life.
How could that be a waste of time?
This project, as it was classified at the time, did not have any peer-reviewed studies to debunk things. So it ran for 25 years. It didn't end until 1995. And this began in like the 1970s.
Okay, so 25 years and no one was checking to see if what they were doing
No,
actually made
there
sense?
was some checking, and we're going to get into it, but it wasn't exactly peer-reviewed.
I, more than anything, want to be the fly on the wall when those guys walk in the door to see what they're doing.
So the idea of using psychics, soldiers, and spies might sound strange, but traveling psychics have been a part of human society since the horse-drawn carriage, and throughout the 1970s through the 1990s, psychics were actually legitimately hired to solve murders and missing persons cases, and sometimes it worked in the way that a broken clock will be right twice a day. So, in 1972, Project Scanate began at the Stanford Research Institute, led by two physicists, Harold Puthoff and Russell Targ. According to the declassified Stargate files, the CIA claimed, and this is a real quote I'm going to read to you now.
Oh.
A large body of reliable experimental evidence points to the inescapable conclusion that extrasensory perception does exist as a real phenomenon. The work of SRI, which is that research facility they're at, using gifted individuals, has achieved some convincing and striking demonstrations of paranormal perception and has demonstrated, perhaps less convincingly, the possible existence of psychokinetic influences upon sophisticated instrumentation.
I'm just picturing the opening to Ghostbusters where it's like the cards and the zapper.
You're not entirely off. We're going to get into what the tests were and the
no.
test subjects.
Well,
The CIA believed that everyone had latent or low-level psychic powers that could potentially be elevated through different treatments and experiments, as well as the existence of psychic savants who were just wonder kids who were born with exceptional powers. And it feels like a Stan Lee comic when we get to that part.
I mean, like, I understand that we, like, humans can detect, like, magnetism to an extent. Like,
Yeah, and there's also just perception, like sound.
Yeah, and there's just, like, little things like your brain is, like, trained to subconsciously pick up and you will perceive it as consciously as intuition.
Yeah, like you can sometimes tell when someone's watching you, things like that, but that doesn't mean you're psychic. They did not believe that. And by the way, those studies they were talking about, again, not peer-reviewed, and when the data was declassified, or in the case that you're about to find out, leaked to certain journalists, well, the scientific community, I like to try and find peer-reviewed studies for this, like scholarly things. But most of these scholarly or like credible sources that were talking about the science behind this were basically just, hey, psychics aren't real. There's nothing to say here. So, The test subjects who were allowed into the program had to achieve a 65% accuracy on their psychic evaluation to participate long
Wow, a
term.
failing grade. I
So,
would love to take one of those tests to see where I score on the psychic meter.
some of the tests were that they had to divine the contents of a sealed box. And once they had succeeded divining the contents of a sealed box, they had to divine the inside of a nearby building, which is what they were hoping you could do. And then they had them test by having them point on a map where nearby military launch sites were, because the military knew where they were and they could
Oh,
confirm the
so
psychic.
their launch sites.
Yeah,
Good.
our counter retaliation sites. Psychic celebrity Uri Geller, who was famous for bending spoons on TV, was brought in to help select candidates and sniff out any Russian spies' consciousness who were trying to spy on their psychic processes.
For those who don't know, the bending spoon thing, the spoon is spring loaded, and you're
Yeah,
like
no,
slowly
he's a
releasing.
he's a scam artist.
So, like, I just don't want to let
Oh,
any of this slide.
an independent psychologist was brought in to appraise the scientific value of what was being done.
Oh,
That the CIA did not choose.
I'm.
He was Ray Hyman, and he was a professor of psychology who declared Geller a fraud and his input nonsensical snake oil, which would have, if there was any data, ruined said data with his input.
You don't say.
So Scan8 lost funding.
No.
So the CIA bailed, and the U.S. Army stepped in,
Of course.
rebranding the project as the Gondola Wish Program, which is a weird code name. And their goal was to evaluate the potential adversary applications of remote viewing.
So,
Yeah.
U.S. Army saw, say, it was like, oh,
Yeah,
this cost a lot of money and got you nothing. Well,
So that's the thing. Compared to developing like a fighter jet, it was much cheaper, but it was still wasting like $20 million annually.
and I know in their mind, it's like they're all taking turns going up to Thor's hammer as like someone who can lift it.
Are you aware of the Men Who Stare at Goats movie?
I know of it. I saw
That's
like the
what this is.
first bit.
The next year, the Army received even more funding and changed their name to Grill Flame and set up in Maryland.
I mean, sounds like a great restaurant. Like,
Yeah.
I would totally go to that burger place.
In 1984, journalist Jack Anderson found out about the CIA and the Army's funded psychics and published articles on it. That same year, the National Academy of Science Research Council weighed in negatively on what was going on, how they were measuring success, their candidates, what they were doing, and the entire thing being stupid. So the Army also lost funding.
Well, what do they know? You know what? They're not going to be laughing when the psychics use their ability to see.
For the next roughly 6 years, the different people involved in the projects were scattered around sort of like a shattered, branching, different pockets of psychics being used by multiple government agencies.
What? Wait.
So they disbanded and then just kind of all got absorbed into weird places.
But they are still being used as psychics.
Yes, in fact, Operation Sunstreak focused on seeing into the future and contacting or detecting UFOs out of space.
These were the people that had nuclear launch codes.
Because Reagan, and this is a real thing, went up to, during a meeting with the USSR and asked their officials, if an alien threat arrived over the White House, could we count on your aid in fighting the alien threat? And he said, yes. And Reagan said, good, we would help you also. Because Reagan believed in aliens.
I mean...
Actors, am I right?
I mean, okay. There's layers to that. For one thing, good, I guess, that we would come together to fight aliens.
Pretty early on in the Cold War, we hit a stalemate, and it was just prodding one another.
You know what? That's progress. And I think in the Cold War, any progress that is good. That being said...
Weird, right?
In a vacuum, that's like, oh, well, that's harmless, and that's like a hypothetical. These men are...
world leaders with nuclear
power.
World
leaders who are currently trading around psychics like they're frickin' pogs.
So... like pogs?
Pogs.
What's a pogs?
Milk caps in the 90s. You would like flip them, and if
the
you
military,
flipped it, you got...
It
I'm
sounded
aware that the military has a different term for it, but
yeah, well, it's Pogue, but I just thought maybe you'd
no.
or Porgs from anyway. So all of the time they spent reshuffling until about 1991, where the CIA once again took over running the show, and the project was all of the disbanded psychics were brought back together underneath one banner, Project Stargate.
Avengers Assemble.
It was the 90s. Everything was rad.
Oh my god.
Stargate claims that they had great success, and their highest level of success was something called an 8 martini day. Would you like to know why?
Did they drink 8 martinis to celebrate?
To calm their nerves after witnessing such psychic power.
Oh,
Taxpayer money.
hold on, pause. I need a moment to.
Psychomantis was real.
Okay, look, I understand this is an audio-based format, and so I can't just have my hands in my face or face in my hands. This is what this is doing to me.
I'm actually using my psychic powers to cause your
Shut.
breakdown.
This is so stupid. They needed.
Are you a non-believer?
I think these people were just wanting to get day drunk. They're like, oh yeah, that really took it for. I'm gonna have to go out and take a long lunch, like that really did it for me. Oh man, I'm gonna have to not go home and see my wife and kid for a while. Oh man, that's gonna be crazy.
So, would you like to know what their successes were?
I can only assume it was like they sat an apple. It was like, what's inside the apple? Like, more apple? Oh my goodness, get another martini. Like, did they just have a bartender on call?
Here's their sort of X-Men first class.
Oh.
Ingo Swann, a New York artist, successfully described the rings of Jupiter years before the pioneered space probe came near or had photographic evidence of it.
Okay, that. You know what? Decent guess.
Which is some very
look,
Federal Bureau of Control nonsense.
His last name's Swan, and then him being able to see space and being.
And as an artist, probably depicting it.
Yeah, that sounds like a character in Heroes.
Again, I was thinking more a Remedy game. Joseph McNeagle, former Army Chief Warrant Officer, which, by the way, ranking-wise, that's like the guy who gets to fly the Apache helicopter is a Chief Warrant Officer. His code name, which, by the way, most people in the military don't get code names. Officer was codenamed...
Please be. I know whatever you're going to say is going to be way dumber than anything my brain could produce.
So his code name was Remote Viewer 001. I don't know why, that's just something about him. He was known for describing the locations and features of a Soviet submarine base that was later confirmed by satellite.
Okay.
And allegedly located hostages and weapons caches with his magic third eye that allowed Special Forces teams to move in and seize and secure these things.
I'm upsetting to think that, based on that description, it's oh yeah, he knew what the building looked like and, the layout of this military base.
Well, he didn't know the internal layout. That's a different guy later on.
But, he knew where, all the buildings were on this base.
He knew where the base was, at least.
I mean...
And he knew
how many wrong guesses did he have? Because I think that's going to
They don't record those.
Oh, yeah.
He received the Legion of Merit Award for his work in Project Stargate.
Oh my god. Dude, could you imagine, walking around with a badge you got for being psychic in the Army?
It'd be pretty
cool.
What
kind of XCOM weird world is that?
Pat Price, former police officer who quit the force due to his psychic powers and joined the group of Project Stargate.
I'm pretty sure that's actually a character in Heroes.
He was able to locate and draw the internal layout of a hidden Soviet base and describe the actions transpiring at the base, which were later confirmed when forces moved in and did spy work physically in the area.
I can't imagine it's they're doing this right now. Go, go, go.
How many things can
I assume it's just
do?
I assume it's just oh, right now there's some people. They're oh yeah, we found them. They were doing something. Was it something military-like? Oh my goodness, he's psychic.
He would regularly find hidden bases within 2 miles of the pin drop that he would put on the map, and would sketch people and places for targets to be searched. So he would divine the shape of a building.
I can't believe it. I'm gonna need a 9th martini.
He had a sudden and mysterious death in 1975, which was suspected to be an assassination by the Soviets, but was never confirmed.
I mean, now could we just go to Russia and be like, "Hey, did you kill a psychic?"
So that's the thing. We know what we learned from their spies, and that we've declassified from the American side. Soviets have still not declassified their own side of the psychic spy program.
I can only assume it's the same, but a lot more brutalist architecture, and
So here's Ed
probably like they're like, "Oh, going to need more vodka."
Ed Dames, codenamed Doctor Doom.
Oh, hold
He
on.
worked to predict catastrophic events, be they natural or otherwise.
It's like, I mean, this guy had to like walk into buildings and be like, "Hey, a bomb was going to go off yesterday. It would have wiped out the entire city. You're welcome."
He was trained to locate terrorists and weapons facilities and became the face of the StarGate program after its declassification.
I mean, with a name like, was his face burned? Like, I want to know what these people look like because I know what I'm picturing is not accurate.
Lynn Buchanan
Oh,
was a U.S. Army officer. He was a StarGate participant and later trained other StarGate participants as well. He became like an instructional officer. He provided psychic overwatch on missions and located terrorists with his psychic powers. And after Stargate was disbanded eventually in 1995, he founded Problem Solution Innovations to continue his research. And yes, Problem Solutions Innovations is PSI, Psi.
and knowing this show and what we do, I assume it's still thriving.
I did not look into it.
They rebranded as Goop.
Honestly, it would make sense. According to the available intel and verifiable facts, like, because sometimes they would say there's going to be a boat named, like, the Pertrabo going from here to here carrying nuclear weapons. And then a real boat would go there called the Botabo, which is similar, but they didn't have the rights to seize and look at it. So you can't chalk that up as a, like, confirmed, yes, they nailed that one. So.
But I'm sure they wrote it down as like, oh man, that was crazy. More martinis.
According to people who tallied up all their confirmed, like, actually we know for sure they got it, what they did helped lead to something versus the unconfirmed and wrong, they were right 15 to 20% of the time.
Oh my goodness. That's not even a coin toss. I need more martinis to cope with this shock.
So most people believe that their success rate was due to chance, probability, and intuition because, as you've may have noticed, many of those people had military backgrounds, and
Or
many of them
were guessing.
Many of them were then given intel to help inform what they were doing, and like you were saying, intuition and a knowledge base based on the way people work, just the way that the human mind can anticipate
and
things.
also, kind of what you said, what else would be happening at a military base? Like they think like, I bet they're playing Twister.
However, their enduring legacy and the fact that the CIA admitted to doing something this insane for that many years with this much money after repeatedly being told this doesn't work.
I assume that some of that money went to like the liver replacements of all these astounded scientists.
The fact that this even existed at all has fueled conspiracy theorists for decades, both in the people who believe that they really were working and have psychic connections to aliens and the lizard people, or the ones who just think, what else is the CIA wasting their time and money on?
I mean, it has to be way dumber than this if this is what they're talking about.
So, that is the story of Project Stargate. What do you think?
I mean, Heroes was super accurate, apparently.
I'm almost more upset that you keep referencing Heroes instead of Control. Or X-Men.
Control, at least, was like, this is too dangerous, we have to keep it safe. Heroes had the, like...
I mean, they were still trying to detect things.
Heroes had, like, I just kind of wandered in here, I also have powers, too. Do you have powers?
Heroes was far worse in its writing. Far worse.
Yeah, except I guarantee you a scientist in Heroes would be like, oh my goodness, did you just, like, pause time? I'm gonna need 8 martinis.
Well, my thought process was, in Alan Moore's Watchmen comic, it's like, hey, we have a dude with cosmic powers now, let's make him intervene against our enemies. And everyone's like, that's a cynical worldview, Alan Moore. And it's like, no, we were really doing it, they were psychics.
Turns out it was Dr. Doom and the artist formerly known as Swan.
But yeah, I thought that was just weird. And it's not even the only crazy what if we used magic for our political regime story I've covered? I'm just holding off on the other one until we get some. I want to see how long we can go before we cover a World War II story.
Like, is Psi Labs still a thing?
I don't know. You have your phone on you.
I'm gonna look this up.
I have all my stuff written down in this notebook. Okay. So if I didn't write it down, I don't have the knowledge. But I can still say that this was still a better use of tax money than the Project StarGate with AI
where
crap.
did he set up Psi Labs? Did it say? Like,
I don't know if I wrote that part down. My handwriting got kind of bad at the end. I was doing laundry at the same time that I was doing research.
I'm seeing a lot of people just the problem is that problem solution innovation has so many things come up that aren't companies. And also, searching this is almost impossible, not just because buzzwords, but because when you type in psychic stuff, it's like XCOM strategies.
Lynn Buchanan, he has his own website.
Is it?
Oh, it's an old website, but judging by that design. Ooh. Or he just hasn't updated it.
Yeah, that's...
You can still contact them. Hang on, let me see when was the last time.
If they don't answer being like...
Copyright is from 1995 to 2025. It's still active. Isn't reality stranger than... Do you think that Project StarGate belongs in a museum?
Not for the reasons they want.
But like Chernobyl should be in a museum, right? Like that's something people should learn about in a history book.
Yeah.
I think we should learn about this.
I think we should have like, yeah, here's like the test subjects and the weird things. But we're also going to bring out the scientists who kept doing this.
This is what happens when you let pseudoscience and unqualified celebrity presidents run your government and collude with Russia. You waste the taxpayer money on a project called Operation StarGate. We've done it twice now. For the love of God, can an adult take the wheel? And I'm telling you right now, Lynn Buchanan is probably listening in while we're recording live with his psychic prowess and his remote viewers, thinking, wow,
yeah,
you should really make
Oh, man, it must suck to be one of those psychics be like, those guys are making fun of me, and there's somewhere within a 2-mile radius on this map.
So.
Oh, I hate those guys.
Unfortunately, Illinois Jackson couldn't make it to the conclusion of this episode. He's still in the hospital after failing to pull up off the runway. So, thank you for listening. This is interesting. We've got some fun stuff. We've got some food-related, some science stuff, some technologies that were cool but just didn't hit the mainstream.
Yeah, I'm slowly doing research on Joan of Arc.
Yeah. I hope you've had as much fun listening as we've had talking. And to all of our psychic viewers out there,
please don't end on that note, please.